Apply the handbrake. Chalk the back wheels to prevent the car from rolling. One of the lug bolts will require a special key, which should be located in your glove box. Break the lug bolts free before lifting the wheel off the ground. Use a breaker bar with a 19mm socket. Raise the front of the car and support it on jack stands. Lifting the car from an improper point can cause damage. Check your owner's manual to see where to place the jack stands under the chassis of the car. Slowly lower the hydraulic jack so the car rests on the jack stands. Remove the lug bolts with your special key and a 19mm socket. You can now remove the wheel from the rotor. Slide the wheel under the chassis for extra safety. Turn the steering wheel to face the caliper out of the wheel well. In this case, there were no set screws in the rotor. Remove the 2 bolts from the caliper using a ratchet wrench with a 14mm socket. You may also need a box wrench to get proper leverage. Attach a bungee cord to the vehicle's suspension or body. Pull the caliper free from the rotor. Tie the caliper to the suspension or to the body with a bungee cord or wire without disconnecting from the brake hose to avoid stressing the brake lines. Move the caliper behind the hub. While not present on this vehicle, there will be 2 spreader clips that you will need to remove before removing the brake pads. Remove the outer and inner brake pads from the caliper bracket. Remove the 2 bolts from the bracket using a ratchet wrench with a 17mm socket. Remove the caliper bracket. At this point, you would remove your set screw. In this case, there were no set screws in the rotor. Insert a single lug bolt onto your rotor and use a hammer to loosen the rotor from the hub. Remove your single lug bolt and remove the rotor from the hub. Move the caliper behind the hub. Normally, you would set up your bleeder hose and bottle here. If you do not have one, you can simply catch the excess fluid with a towel. Remove the bleeder screw cover. Loosen, but do not completely remove, the bleeder screw with a 10mm wrench. Catch the excess fluid with a towel. Move the caliper back in front of the hub. Use a 100mm C-clamp and one of the old pads, or a caliper piston tool, to retract the caliper piston as far as possible. Catch the excess fluid with a towel. Tighten the bleeder valve. Move the caliper behind the hub. Use the wire brush to remove rust and buildup. Please wear eye protection and a face mask when brushing or cleaning parts. You may want to spray the hub with brake cleaner after wire brushing it. It is good practice to compare your old and new brake rotor to make sure they are the same size and diameter. Install the rotor onto the hub. Use a lug bolt to hold the rotor in place. In this case, there were no set screws in the rotor. Remove the old brake hardware from the caliper bracket. Use a wire brush to clean the brake caliper bracket from rust and buildup. Spray the bracket with brake cleaner. Your AmeriBRAKES kit includes the proper replacement hardware. Install the new abutment clips. Apply high-temperature brake grease to the clips where they will make contact with the brake pads. Remove and wipe down the caliper slide pins. Grease the slides, then reinstall them into the caliper bracket. Remove any old buildup on the bracket bolts with a wire brush. Reinstall the brake caliper bracket with its 2 17mm bolts. Tighten the bolts with a 17mm socket. Using a torque wrench, tighten the bolts to 115 Newton meters. Apply grease to where the pad makes contact with the piston. Apply high-temperature brake grease to the points on the pads where they will contact the caliper. Avoid getting the grease on the friction surface or the rotor surface. It's important to be careful not to apply too much, as this could cause other problems such as contaminating the friction surface and inhibiting smooth sliding and movement. The brake sensor is located on the inner pad and must be installed with it pointing upwards. Install your new brake pads. Your AmeriBRAKES kit includes the proper replacement hardware, in this case being 2 spreader clips. Install the 2 spreader clips into the pads. Remove any old buildup on the caliper bolts with a wire brush. Reassemble the caliper over the rotor. Remove the cable or wire that you used to hang the caliper on. Install the 2 14mm bolts by hand tightening or using a ratchet. You may also need a box wrench to get proper leverage. Using a torque wrench, tighten the bolts to 34 Newton meters. With a 10mm wrench, loosen the bleeder valve. Press the brakes pedal multiple times until the fluid flows out of the bleeder valve smoothly without any air bubbles. Tighten the bleeder valve. Clean up excess fluid. Reinstall the bleeder screw cover. Turn the steering wheel back to its original position. Remove the lug bolt from the rotor. Remove the wheel from underneath your vehicle. Reinstall the wheel over the hub and align the mounting holes. Insert the lug bolts and lightly tighten them. Tighten the bolts in a star pattern with a 19mm socket and the special key. Raise the jack so you can remove the jack stands. Completely lower the vehicle and remove the jack. Using a torque wrench with a 19mm socket, tighten the bolts in a star pattern to 108 Newton meters. With your special key and a tire iron, finish tightening the final lug bolt. Without starting the engine, press the brake pedal several times until you feel significant resistance. Check the brake fluid level and refill if necessary. Remove the wheel chock. Disengage the handbrake. Thank you for using AmeriBRAKES. For more information on our products, visit AmeriBRAKES.com.